Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin and we're going to be looking at the return on investment or ROI bands. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. We're going to check out the sale on the premium list. We'll keep that going for about 3 more days. If you want to lock in the lower rate, you can find a link to that in the description below. What is this chart? This is the most confusing chart I probably put out, and I also typically make the mistake of covering up part of the chart with the video, with the webcam. So I've moved myself to be in the lower left, and I've minimized it a little bit because what's more important is to actually see the chart over anything else. So what is this chart? Well, on the primary y-axis, which is the y-axis on the left side, it's a logarithmic scale, and it's the price of Bitcoin, which corresponds to the white line, which you're probably all familiar with. The yellow bands that you see going across the page are essentially corresponding to the secondary y-axis on the right side, and they correspond to the amount of time you would have to wait had you bought Bitcoin at that point to double your money, to double up your money. So for instance, if you bought Bitcoin in 2013 right here, the amount of time you would have had to have waited to see a modest 2x, you just go find the yellow dot corresponding to that time frame, you scroll up, you go all the way over, and you can see, in fact, it would have taken you just over 1,000 days. This would have been had you bought it at the market cycle peak. If, on the other hand, you stick around for bear markets and they don't scare you off, you'll see that the amount of time to 2x your investment can actually be a lot shorter. For instance, this might not seem like a huge difference, but you must also recognize that the secondary y-axis is also on a logarithmic scale. So this is 100 days, this is 1,000. So this here is only a couple hundred days, maybe 300 days, to see a 2x on your investment, as opposed to having to wait well over 1,000 days if you buy it at the market cycle peak. Therefore, it does go to show that dollar cost averaging, or what I typically do is dynamically dollar cost averaging based on the risk level. Again, we cover this in the premium list. But dynamically dollar cost averaging does make a lot of sense as opposed to a lump sum. Now, if you can lump sum at the bottom, clearly that's the best winning strategy. If you lump sum at the market cycle peak and don't have any dry powder to buy up things in say, a bear market, then you don't leave yourself much wiggle room. So, if we just take a look at this a little bit closer, what else will you notice? The amount of time to double your investment at the lowest possible time each cycle is increasing. For instance, early on, it would only have taken a few days. Then the second cycle, you're talking about 8 days, 10 days, maybe a little bit more. The next cycle, you can see we're coming up even higher. This one, we're coming up even higher. Remember, this is a logarithmic scale, so it went from, say, like 10 days over here up to 20 or 30 days. This is the quickest you could have seen a 2x on your investment. And it shows you, again, that macro level volatility is decreasing, okay? It just simply is. We are not seeing a 2x quite as quickly as we ever have before. For instance, back over here, we were able to experience a 2x in just a day or two at various points in time. Now, to see a 2x in a day is a little bit absurd, but could you experience it in a few weeks? Absolutely. And we've been doing that even in this market cycle. Now, a lot of people are most certainly not getting out of bed for a very modest 2x return on Bitcoin, right? No one gets out of bed for a 2x. We can also go look at other ROI bands like 2x, 4x, 6x, 8, 10, 20, 50, and a very modest 100x return on your Bitcoin. And you'll see these nice ROI bands that pop up, and they follow the same typical pattern that you saw for the 2x ones. The higher bands show up a lot less frequently just because it takes a lot longer to yield a 100 return on your investment, and none of the prices in recent times have yielded a 100x return on your investment. The best price you could have gotten for Bitcoin in recent history, at least in this cycle, would have been at $3,100, and unfortunately we do not have a $310,000 Bitcoin. Hopefully we will one day, but very likely not going to happen this market cycle. We could, however, I would say it's more likely we could experience a $100,000 to $200,000 Bitcoin in the event of diminishing returns. Now, it's hard to make out what's going on this chart, so what we can do is we can remove some of the ones that are not as important, like 6x or 8x, and let's just go look at 2, 10, 50, and 100. So 10x are these red bands, and you can see similar traits that the amount of time at the lowest is generally increasing to experience a 10x on your investment. I would also like to point out that it looks like what I'm hoping for, as I've said before, is a repeat of 2013 where we have a double band. So another band that comes, but later on, right? We had this first band here, and we would like to see another band later on that shows us that had you bought then, you still could have experienced a 2x on your investment, hopefully a 4x or a 6x, so on and so forth. The reason we've identified that is just because it does not appear that 64K was the market cycle peak. It is a local top, and that local top could stay like that for a while. Remember in 2013, we had a peak early in the year, and then we had another peak later in the year. I would contend, while there is a possibility that we would get a market cycle peak this year, I think it is more likely to not happen this year and more likely to happen next year. Maybe even beyond that. We'll have to play it one day at a time. And obviously, if Bitcoin is going to 150K by the end of the year, then we'll have to reassess the timing on a market cycle peak. So we look at this chart and say, well, so far we've seen a pretty nice band that is developed, a 2x band that is developed from Bitcoin making a major move this market cycle. And you can see that they all level off at the end because they start to go down at the end, not level off, they start to really go down at the end and get really vertical, because at the very end of a move, you're seeing a 2x in a relatively short period of time. This might be an interesting chart to watch in the event that we see another band come down into this region again, because it might signify that we are getting a little bit too overheated in the short term. You can see that this band came down relatively quickly, and it was only a few weeks later where we really started to top out. The reason we didn't have any more bands over here is because the price was just more or less stagnant at that point. I mean, we went to 58K, then 61, then 64. We weren't as easily putting in 2x returns in a methodical manner. I do like showing this chart though, because I think it gives a different outlook on the market. It clearly shows that it's taking longer to experience 10x moves. It's taking longer to experience 2x moves, 50x moves, 100x moves. It's going to become harder and harder to do so. And if that upsets you, then at least think about the people that are buying Bitcoin 10 years from now. It's going to be even harder for them. While the law of diminishing returns does not appeal to a lot of people, it should be noted that still with Bitcoin, diminishing returns is still much better than returns you'll see in most every other asset class. If you want to speculate on other things like other than Bitcoin, there's obviously a lot of other cryptocurrencies you can speculate on, which will likely give you more upside potential at the expense of more risk to the downside. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on the premium list. You can find a link to that in the description below. At the very least, subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon to turn on notifications, and I will see you next time. Bye.